Flat piece of paper, world on other side, big challenge. How do we trick the eye into seeing another dimension? Everyone knows about vanishing points in perspective. I want to show you that they are only one of 5 secrets to make a flat surface look 3D. 5 ways to create the illusion of depth. Even before perspective became a science, artists noticed that when things go away from a viewer, they get smaller, closer together, change shape, hide behind other things, and fade. Let's take these one at a time and use technical terms, starting with diminution. Things get smaller as they go away. Things getting smaller don't necessarily look like they're going away. They may just look like they're shrinking. But smaller is one way to make things look farther away. Since we look down on the world a lot, small things higher up in the picture seem more distant. That's a very old trick to create the illusion that parts of a picture are closer or farther. But it isn't a rule that higher is farther. Sometimes things shrink as they go down the picture, but not necessarily. The one thing we know is that closer gets bigger, farther gets smaller. It's why we can draw an airplane smaller than an eyeball if the eyeball is up close and the plane is in the sky. And it's why the sun, big as it is, seems like the size of an eyeball to us. When things go away, they get small. Diminution. Now let's get specific with how they get small. Convergence. Parallel lines meet at vanishing points. Every line on this box is one of 3 sets of parallel lines: up, down, left, right, and forward, back. Here is a law of perspective. When parallel lines go away from our face, they meet somewhere out there. They may converge dramatically or hardly at all. They may connect in the picture or out of the picture. In fact, they are parallel. If they don't go away, we see them as parallel. But if they go away, they converge at a vanishing point. Convergence is why, by drawing a starburst, you can lay out a city in one-point perspective. One set of lines goes away. If you draw 2 starbursts in any position, you can lay out a city in 2-point perspective. 2 sets of lines go away. However many points you have, 1, 2, or 7, convergence, where lines come together, happens when parallel lines go away. That's a big deal in learning perspective. It will be part of how we solve many a perspective problem. We'll spend lots of time on it. It's a simple truth, but when it meets the complexity of the world in organic forms, which seldom have parallel lines, how does convergence of parallel lines relate? Well, it does, but the answer takes time and some stages of understanding. Here, we're getting the overview. Now, let's move on. Foreshortening. Looking along a thing changes its shape. Foreshortening is this. A long thing looks shorter when one end is forward. Forward, it shortens. Foreshortening. It's a troublesome trick. A foreshortened object may just look confusing. But when it's done well, it really does give a convincing sense of three-dimensionality. When we draw things out of perspective in what we call orthos, proportions stay fixed. A thing is as high or as wide or as deep as the drawing says it is. We can measure on orthos. As soon as we pop a thing out of that surface and place it into other positions, proportions change. Foreshortening changes the appearance of pretty much everything. It is perhaps the most difficult of these 5 skills. Foreshortening takes more than drawing an object in several positions to memorize them. That helps, but the secret to drawing foreshortened forms is to know how to draw their positions as simplified forms. That is the most useful and the most challenging skill in perspective, but there's one thing about it that's easy to learn. In a foreshortened position, close portions overlap portions behind them, which brings us to overlap. Close covers distant. Overlap is the most basic trick. Kids and cartoonists who haven't studied perspective use overlap. It's instinctive. When something covers whatever's behind it, it's closer. This works in cartoons. But it's also how we master drawing figures or natural forms. Overlap. Simple and useful. Now, for our fifth trick, creating illusory space. Atmosphere. Distant things fade. Linear perspective is all about lines. Atmospheric perspective is about air. When there's lots of it, air creates atmosphere. That's why it's sometimes called aerial perspective. Think of air as fog. Let's look at how we can use it. We can make lines look like they go back into space by thinning them up as they go. Thinning them up is convergence. But thinner looks lighter. Lightening them as they go back is atmospheric. But it's not a rule that lightening things makes them look distant. That only works in a light world. In a dark world, or blue world, or gray one, we can make things darker, or bluer, or grayer as they disappear into the background. We can combine different methods, and here's where perspective starts to get creative. We overlapped this by casting a shadow behind it, distant part darker. We could do the opposite, no shadow, fade back the distant lines, distant part lighter. Different effects, same illusion. Some artists include haze to create layers of depth. Caspar David Friedrich loved to create atmosphere that way. Atmosphere. One of 5 ways to create the illusion of depth on a surface. Let's review. Diminution means farther away things look smaller. They diminish. Convergence happens when parallel lines go away and converge at a point. Foreshortening. The end of a long object comes forward and the whole object seems to get shorter. Overlap outdoes all the others to fool us into seeing one thing closer. And finally, aerial or atmospheric perspective, apart from lines. Fog deepens the illusion of space. Artists refer to this list when making a picture to see how each method applies. Not that you'll use every trick in a picture, but having this list may remind you that one of these may be a missing ingredient, and taking one out may improve the design. You don't need to play every card. Play what wins. Yeah! I don't get that. There is a 6th trick, a big one, called rendering. It means shading to make things look real. It can be summed up like this. An artist can smudge darks, lights, midtones, and patches of color to make them appear as 3-dimensional forms. But here's the thing. The logic of lighting a form comes from linear perspective, knowing the lines of the form, along and across and around. Perspective lines. That's where these lessons are going. It's good to study perspective and rendering alongside one another, but if you must learn them one at a time, perspective comes first. Cross-contour lines create structure for light. Cross-contour lines are perspective lines. Cross-contour lines don't come easily, hence this course. If you feel threatened, let me remind you, you're going to understand cross-contour lines quite thoroughly if you stick with this. Light, form, and rendering? A whole other course. Dorian Eaton is one of the best teachers for that with his shading course, and this course in perspective will prepare you for that course in shading. you'll learn to place lines of all kinds to define form. As for rendering, we'll study only the simplest kind, atmosphere. Watch this. Watch this. Back to our short list of 5. This gives us plenty to play with. Now, I tried making an acronym of this to remember all 5, but DCFOA wasn't working, so I tried everything else: FOCAD, DACOF, CODAF, KFOD, CADOV, COAF, FOACT, and FOACT. I think we'll just stick with DCFOA. The important thing is to get them into our brains. Let's go through them really fast. Diminution, convergence, foreshortening, overlap, atmosphere. We can use each of these alone or in combination when we want to draw into that surface. Knowing these methods is only a start. Each has a science behind it. The last 2 aren't much of a challenge to learn. The amount a thing fades away could be measured, but artists don't bother. They simply add atmospheric depth until they like what they see. And overlap is pretty simple. Even with transparent objects like bubbles, edges will block out the objects behind them. No need to get scientific on overlap, but look at these others. How small exactly do things get when they go away? And what about the spaces between them? How much does an object foreshorten in tipping toward or away? Is there a way to know exactly? And how do we know where to aim lines that meet out there somewhere at vanishing points? Those questions are the reason this is a course. We will answer them step at a time. This was a start. Now that you know all these methods for making a surface look deep, how will you use them? Here's your project. Look at your collection of favorite images. Rate every image on a 1 to 5 scale for each of these DCFOA depth tricks. Post them on this lesson's assignment tab at Proko.com, and I'll show you examples in Premium. We'll look at old comic strips to see what a cartoonist can do with perspective. That can inspire you. There's much more in our Premium lessons. Go see Proko.com/perspective. See you soon.